Yo, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, today we are going to be going over each and every single fight at UFC 313, Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev. Now, the first fight of the night is going to be between Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda. Honestly, this is a pretty decent first fight of the night in the prelims. Now, for those of you guys that don't know, Chris Gutierrez has some pretty damn accurate hands. I think he's top 3 in bantamweight right now. The only thing about Chris Gutierrez that kind of messes him up is his lack of takedown defense, in my honest opinion, and that's why I think it's pretty easy to make a game plan surrounded around pretty much beating someone like Chris Gutierrez. Besides that, I think that he is a pretty damn good striker, and I think that that's going to be the way that he wins this matchup. John Castaneda has some pretty good statistics on his own right. You know, he has some good significant strikes that land 50%. But the main thing about John Castaneda that pretty much catches my eye about this fight is the fact that he absorbs a lot of freaking damage. 5.22 strikes per minute is pretty damn high. He doesn't have the best freaking defense. And as we know, Chris Gutierrez is pretty damn accurate with his striking. So with that being said, for this fight, I'm pretty much giving it to Chris Gutierrez to take the dub in this one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and for the second fight in the early prelims is going to be the Jordan Santos versus Ozzy Diaz. Some important facts about this fight. Ozzy Diaz poses a significant height advantage. Right now, there isn't a height for the Jordan Santos, but he is currently standing at 6 feet in the middleweight division, and he's going to be making his debut for the UFC, going against a guy that has some experience already in the professional level, having a record of 9-3. And right now, the Jordan Santos only has one fight at the professional level. And it's going to be pretty interesting to see what the Jordan Santos is able to do in this fight. We need to go over some of these statistics because, in my honest opinion, I'm leaning towards Santos right now. But it's gonna be we're pretty much gonna get a good feel of how good Santos is in the first round, because right now I think in the MMA world people are starting to say that Santos is a more technical, cerebral type fighter, which I would agree, you know, especially facing off against someone like Ozzy Diaz, who does absorb a significant amount of damage per minute. If you guys just look at these statistics, you know, 4.74%, I mean 4.74 strikes per minute is a pretty decent amount of damage, you know, and he doesn't have the best defense, is below average at 46%. You know, the average at the middleweight division is about 48 to 49%. And right now, Ozzy Diaz is a little bit under the average percentage of that statistic, you know, and that's pretty important for us going into this fight, because even though Ozzy Diaz does pose a significant height advantage in this fight, if he's not able to use his height advantage or his reach advantage in this fight, the Jordan Santos, being a little bit more technical, could probably find an easy win for this matchup. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pretty much do a little bit of a coin flip, take a little bit of a risk on the Jordan Santos, and we're going to go ahead and give him the pick for this matchup. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and yet again, we have another very interesting fight going on in the early prelims. For all the die-hard MMA fans, you know who Myron Santos is. He is the Ultimate Fighter winner. He's going to be facing off against Francis Marshall, a guy that's 2-2 right now in the UFC, I believe. So Francis Marshall, obviously, you know, he got signed to the UFC when he was really young. I think he was like 21, 22 years old when he got signed to the UFC. And pretty much right now, Francis Marshall is obviously going to be having the most experience coming into this fight. I think that he's pretty decent at mixing up striking and wrestling. I think that that's going to be his best chance at beating someone like Myron Santos, who's going to be coming into this fight with all the confidence in the world, being the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, which I think, you know, could be a good thing or a really bad thing for Myron Santos. He has to be really careful with the way that he approaches someone like Francis Marshall, who is going to be having the experience factor in this fight. I think that one of the main things to be concerned about with Myron Santos is how good or how he manages his grappling and wrestling exchanges, and how he chooses his positioning, because that's probably the only thing that we haven't really seen Myron Santos do. And obviously the statistics back that up. He doesn't even have any, statistics there at all. And obviously, we have a little bit more statistics there whenever it comes to Francis Marshall. But like I said, I think based on some of the film study that I've been seeing from Francis Marshall, he does a pretty decent job at mixing up both the striking and the wrestling. So if I'm Francis Marshall, if his path to victory in this fight, to get a win, obviously is to try to mix up some of the things that we haven't really seen Myron Santos pretty much have any experience at in the UFC. Obviously, Francis Marshall got signed when he was like 21, 22 years old. He's 25 right now. Myron Santos is 24 years old. I mean, two, three more fights in the UFC could be a freaking big difference. This is going to be a test for Myron Santos to see whether or not, he's up there with some of the other young guys that have a lot more experience than him. I think that this one, in my honest opinion, might be a little bit more of a coin flip, but my gut is telling me that Francis Marshall is probably going to end up with the win in this fight. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. All right, and for the first fight of the prelims, we got Alex Morono taking on Carlos Leal. Now, in my honest opinion, I feel like Carlos Leal right now is the better defensively responsible fighter compared to Alex Morono, and I think that that's going to be the main reason why we see Carlos Leal take the win in this fight. Alex Morono is a guy that has obviously a lot of professional experience. So does Carlos Leal, but for some reason, he just always manages to put himself in really detrimental positions for no freaking reason at all. Alex Morono will do it on purpose. I've seen this guy do this like over and over again, and it's kind of frustrating to see that Alex Morono will have dominant positions and then give up those positions for really risky positions, and then overall just losing the sequence in the fight, thus losing rounds. And we see this from him over and over and over again. I'm not saying that Alex Morono's a dumb fighter. He is not a dumb fighter. He just takes really reckless and risky chances sometimes, and I think that that's costing him a lot of wins in the UFC. I think that Alex Morono is a pretty solid fighter. I think he would have a lot more success at the professional level if he were just to calm the fuck down and just think a little bit more and have a little bit more of critical thinking inside of the octagon. But obviously that's not the case. I think that this is just a tried and true version of Alex Morono, that he is never ever gonna change. He is never gonna change the way that he fights. Because I've been saying this for a long time. Alex Morono, for some reason, just gives up dominant positions. Who knows why? Maybe he's trying to end the fight early or whatever. But I just think that Alex Morono's biggest freaking weakness is his decision making. Carlos Leal is the complete opposite. I think that Carlos Leal obviously doesn't take enough risk. And I think that overall, he just is a more defensive fighter, especially in the grappling department. And for that reason alone, I think that Alex Morono somehow is going to get himself in a really bad position in the grappling, in the wrestling department. And Carlos Leal is just going to get into dominant positions and win that way. So we're going to go ahead and pick Carlos Leal to get the dub in this one. All right, and for this next fight, we got Bruno Ferreira taking on Arman Petrosyan. This is going to be a pretty underrated fight. It's going to be a fight that is going to go under the radar for whatever reason, but I think this is going to be a pretty fun fight to watch. Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about Bruno Ferreira first because I think that he's a pretty interesting fighter. Obviously, he's coming off a loss, but I think Bruno Ferreira has all the physical capabilities to be one of the most dangerous guys in his division. However, this guy just fights like an absolute dumbass, if I'm just being completely honest. He fights so freaking weird. Like it's kind of hard to explain, but to pretty much sum it up, he takes even like above. If I talk bad about Alex Morono, we're gonna talk really bad about Bruno Ferreira. He just makes like the most insane decisions in the UFC. I'm talking about like the definition of reckless, bad positionings for the sake of trying to get the fight over within like a split second of a 50-50 engagement, which is something that we see consistently from Bruno Ferreira. Granted, I will give him a little bit of credit. Thus far in the UFC, he has hurt pretty much all of his opponents. And I think that it's going to be pretty similar in this fight. I think that Arman Petrosyan gets a little bit too much credit in the UFC in my honest opinion, I don't really see what people are seeing whenever they say that Arman Petrosyan is a technical striker. I don't see that at all. Whenever we saw him fight Shara Magomedov, in my honest opinion, I didn't see not one good technical decision from Arman Petrosyan. Look, if I'm being honest, he has some pretty decent technique, but as far as being a tactician in terms of striking, I don't see it. A tactician like someone like Alex Pereira who's looking to make you make mistakes so that he can counter you, that's being a good tactician. A tactician like Ilya Topuria pressuring you to the fence so that you could move or force a 50-50 engagement so that he could come back and pretty much give his own 50-50 engagement off of your engagement. That's being a good tactician in a macro sense. I don't see that from Arman Petrosyan. When I see Arman Petrosyan fight, I see a guy that has a pretty good looking jab, a guy that has a pretty good looking cross, a guy that has decent kicks, but I don't think that he is the tactician that a lot of people in MMA YouTube give him credit for being. And I'm sorry, is that's a crazy take? Go ahead and write me a comment in the comment section. I think that he's gonna get pretty much I think he's gonna get his freaking head knocked out in this fight. I think Bruno Ferreira just beats him just because. And we're gonna go ahead and give Bruno Ferreira the dub prediction for this matchup. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for this next fight in the prelims, we got Joshua Van taking on Ray Saruya. Man, this is a crazy fight, a super interesting fight. The complete opposite types of styles coming in to the octagon is going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, Ray Saruya coming into the UFC, going undefeated in his first couple of fights in the UFC. Joshua Van being the number 15th flyweight. Interesting, super interesting. We know that Ray Saruya obviously has a grappling heavy style, and Joshua Van obviously really, really good striking. Really quick, really fast, can rip to the body. It's gonna be very interesting to see the decision making of both of these guys. Ray Saruya, in my opinion, is a really slick fighter. He is a very smart fighter in the way that he gets his opponents to kind of fall into his game. So Joshua Van, man, I think in this fight should pretty much tread lightly, but take some chances against Ray Saruya and force Ray Saruya to make some mistakes. Ray Saruya, obviously, he's undefeated, so it would be crazy to see Joshua Van, take the O of a fighter that has a lot of momentum coming into this one. I really don't know who to pick because of the complete polar opposite of styles in this one. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and pretty much pick Joshua Van. Shout out to everybody training over there at 4-Ounce MMA. I got a homie out there that's training at 4-Ounce. Shout out to 4-Ounce MMA. Joshua Van obviously trains out there. I have a friend that trains at 4-Ounce MMA. We're gonna just go with the hometown guy, Joshua Van. We're gonna pick Joshua Van to take the dub in this one. And let's go ahead and get it done for the city, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And now we got this fight between Curtis Blades, the number 5 ranked heavyweight, taking on Rizvan Kuniev. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But this is a very, very risky fight for Curtis Blades. Rizvan Kuniev is a guy that has had a lot of success outside of the UFC. That's as much as I'm going to go over. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this guy has been known to juice, literally. Like, he's been caught juicing. I think that this is an extremely risky fight for Curtis Blades. Rizvan Kuniev, for those of you guys that don't know, this guy has a lot, like well above significant strikes landed percentages above average, well above average. 72%. It's pretty damn good. He lands almost 6 shots per minute. That is solid freaking numbers. Now, granted, he hasn't fought anybody in the UFC. This is going to be his first test against a very, very, very established fighter like Curtis Blades. I don't know why Curtis Blades accepted this fight. This is a very dangerous one. This is one that we have to pretty much keep an eye out for, because something is telling me that Kuniev might knock out Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades in his last fight got knocked out in a minute. He got put away in a minute, ladies and gentlemen, by Tom Aspinall. I know that Kuniev isn't Tom Aspinall, but Curtis Blades he's been put away a lot in his UFC career. You know, he's gonna go against somebody that has, obviously a lot of success outside of the UFC. Not saying that he is at that level yet, but he could very well be. And he's gonna be taking a risk. Curtis Blades is gonna be taking a risk on this one. It's gonna be a fight that I'm gonna be definitely be keeping my eyes on, because the possibilities of this fight ending in a knockout is pretty damn high, and is not gonna be by Curtis Blades. I think that Curtis Blades' best strategy to win this fight is to win rounds. And I don't think this fight is going to make it to the end. Somebody's getting knocked out. All right, and so the next fight I think is a pretty interesting one as well. We have King Green taking on Mauricio Huffy, and I'm going to be quick about this one. I do think that Mauricio Huffy is going to go ahead and take this win. The one thing I will say about Mauricio Huffy is that he is going to be taking a little bit of a risk in this one, because King Green obviously has seen it, done it in the UFC, has a whole lot of experience. Mauricio Huffy is a guy that's been having a whole lot of success being an offensive counter fighter from the southpaw position, which is a position that we really don't see, in MMA. We usually see that a lot in boxing, but not in MMA, obviously, because of the little gloves that we see MMA fighters have. We have seen offensive counter fighters before in the UFC. We just don't really see it too often. We really do see a lot of success from southpaw fighters being a more of a defensive counter fighter, which is two completely different systems, two completely different ways of landing strikes. But Mauricio Huffy thus far has been doing pretty well, being an offensive counter fighter, meaning that he's waiting for his opponents to set some sort of engagement before he goes along with a counter. He has gaps in his defense, not because he's defensively irresponsible, but because he's literally waiting for his opponents to come in and try to land some sort of offense so that he could find his positionings to land his offensive schemes. So obviously, with that being said, Mauricio Huffy is going to be taking a little bit of a risk in this one, because Bobby Green, obviously, like I said, has the experience, has seen it, done it in the UFC. Bobby Green in this one obviously is a must win for him, because he got beat by Paddy Pimblett. That should say enough. But anyways, even with the pressure behind Bobby Green's back, I still think that Mauricio Huffy is going to take the dub in this one. All right, and for the next fight in the main card, we got Amanda Lemos versus Yasmin Lucindo. I think that Lucindo does a pretty decent job at landing on her opponents, and she could definitely can crack. I think we've seen that before. Amanda Lemos is getting up there in age, man. I think that this is going to be one of those fights that's like the passing of the torch. In my honest opinion, I think that Lucindo goes ahead and takes the W in this one. All right, and for the next fight at UFC 313 in the main card, we got Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. This one is freaking crazy. Both these guys are freaking huge for their division. Jalen Turner being 6'3" and Ignacio Bahamondes being 6'3" at 155 is absolutely insane. These guys are middleweight height type guys fighting at lightweight. That's insane. I do think that Ignacio Bahamondes has a little bit better percentages, with accuracy than Jalen Turner, but Jalen Turner has looked the best against better quality opponents. He was supposed to get the win over Moicano and just gave up that win, and it's so frustrating to see someone like Jalen Turner just not end the fight when he was supposed to end the fight. I think for that reason alone, I'm kind of siding with Jalen Turner. There's a lot of people out there that are picking Ignacio Bahamondes to win this one just because of the percentage that he has. I just think Jalen Turner, because he's looked better against better quality opponents, I think that I'm edging towards his direction. I think that Jalen Turner is going to go ahead and win this fight, if I'm just being completely honest. All right, and for the co-main event, we got Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. This one is a good fight. It's a good fight, but I am picking Justin Gaethje to win. There's just a lot of things that are, just stacked up against Rafael Fiziev that just don't look good on paper. I mean, he's coming off an ACL tear. He hasn't fought in like over a year. We don't know how he's looking right now or how he's going to step into this fight, because ring rust, I think, is a real thing. I mean, if you haven't competed at the professional level in a long time, I think that's going to be pretty freaking evident. He's coming off a 2-fight losing streak. Obviously, Justin Gaethje's coming off a loss as well, but he's been a lot more active. And I think that if it weren't because he got his freaking nose absolutely obliterated whenever he fought Max Holloway, he would have had a better chance of winning that fight. Obviously, he took a really, really bad hit in the early rounds, and that just cost him for the rest of the fight. But Justin Gaethje also has a win over Rafael Fiziev, and he knows how to beat a guy that kind of has that style. Obviously, Rafael Fiziev is going to come into this fight trying to strike how we all know he can do, but he's already lost to Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a taller guy with a shorter reach, but he has insane freaking kicks. And I think that Justin Gaethje is going to be using a little bit of those kicks to try to find dominant positions over Rafael Fiziev, like we've seen him do in the last fight. Like I said, there's just a lot stacked up against Rafael Fiziev. He's going to be feeling the pressure coming off an injury in a 2-fight losing streak. I just don't see how it's logical to pick Rafael Fiziev to be the victor in this one. So I'm siding with Justin Gaethje to get it done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and for the main event, we got Alex Pereira taking on Magomed Ankalaev, a very anticipated fight for the light heavyweight division, probably Alex Pereira's biggest test yet, although I really don't see it that way. There's a lot of people out there that seem to believe that Magomed Ankalaev is just Alex Pereira's kryptonite, and I just don't see it because there's a lot of factors that we know about already that it's going to be pretty hard for Magomed Ankalaev to compete. First and foremost, he is taking one of the biggest risks I've ever seen a fighter do, and that is taking a fight at this level at this day and age against probably one of the most dangerous strikers we've ever seen in UFC history, period. You know, that being Alex Pereira while he is performing Ramadan. Now, this could just be a disposition feint, in my honest opinion, because we have heard from other Muslim fighters that they have ate and they have had, proper uh, diet plans whenever they are performing Ramadan because they are literally performing or they're literally preparing for a fight. So in some way, I think that some of those guys get like uh forgiveness or whatever because they're preparing to go to war or something like that. So that could be the case for something like Magomed Ankalaev. Like I said, it could just be a disposition feint, and he could just be um trying to play mind games with Alex Pereira because we have been hearing that take a lot. That Magomed Ankalaev is pretty much going to be going into this fight depleted because he's not taking in calories. So I really don't see Alex Pereira falling for that. I think that Alex Pereira is pretty much going to be coming into this fight expecting, Magomed Ankalaev to be Magomed Ankalaev, a guy that does pretty decent at mixing everything up. I don't think that Magomed Ankalaev is particularly elite at anything. I think that he is overall a good UFC fighter, MMA fighter, but there is just not one thing that I would say that Magomed Ankalaev is absolutely elite in. On the other hand, Alex Pereira is probably the most talented, the most dangerous, and the most freaking one of the best strikers the UFC has ever seen, period. Alex Pereira has a very interesting system in the way that he pretty much makes his opponents become offensive so that he could land some counter shots from the orthodox stance. And that is exactly what I expect to see from Alex Pereira. His tried and true landing the cross so that his opponents could try to counter and he's countering off of their counter. Alex Pereira is a very, very quick guy for a light heavyweight fighter. This guy is super quick with his reflexes. Every time I see this guy um pretty much hitting the mitts, he's always drilling. And I'm talking about always drilling counter shots. Like I don't think I've ever seen not one uh pad session from Alex Pereira where he is not drilling counters. That's Alex Pereira's bread and butter. From the one thing that I've noticed whenever I have studied Alex Pereira in his film is the fact that he is probably the most crisp counter fighter in the UFC period. Another guy, this is just a different topic for a different video, but Ilya Topuria is obviously a guy that does pretty well in the counters as well. Obviously, he has a lot of knockouts over a lot of good guys in the featherweight division, but that's a different topic for a different video. But Alex Pereira is probably up there with, being a really, really, really good counter fighter. And I think that Magomed Ankalaev just isn't that, well established in terms of knowing methods and just knowing overall striking uh offensive schemes for him to be aware of the fact that Alex Pereira is literally going to be trying to bait him into throwing some shots that are most likely going to be followed up by a counter. I think that Alex Pereira gets his job done. I think that he beats Magomed Ankalaev, and I think that he's potentially going to be fighting John Jones next. That is my take. Alex Pereira takes the dub. That's pretty much all I have for this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys enjoyed it, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you guys agree or disagree with any of the takes that I had in today's video, make sure you guys yell at me down in the comments, because I just love reading those comments. We go back and forth all day. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment. As always, it's a pleasure. Peace out and have a good one.